Our next parameter is substrate siltation coverage. This measures the amount of silt, which is the very fine dirt particles, almost like what mud is. How much of that is covering the stream bottom? So you may have a rocky stream, but some of those tops of the rocks could be covered by silt. So we're looking at just like the top view of the stream bottom, how much of it has silt on top of it. This is a very good measure of erosion, how much dirt is washing into your stream and settling on top of your rocks. If you have a lot of siltation going on, this can be detrimental to the macroinvertebrates, because these guys a lot of times use the rock spaces or get in between the sticks or filter feed, and they can't filter out all this silt that's coming through the water. So it can really kind of destroy some of the aquatic life's habitat. So if we look at this stream, it doesn't look like there's too much siltation in the water. I see gravel and sand mostly. For this test, it's a good idea to grab some in your hand and just look at it. If you get it closer to your face, you can tell a lot more about the stream. For this stream, you can tell that it's mostly sand and gravel. We don't have any of the super fine silt. And silt is just dirt. It looks like it's grayer or blacker. You can't rub it between your fingers and feel the grain of it like you can sand. It's a lot smoother. So for here, it's mostly sand and gravel, not much silt coverage. So for now, for this site, you kind of give it a glance over for this 50-foot section, and then you would estimate your silt coverage. We would say very low here. I really don't see any, just a lot of sand in this stream. So we would mark a 0% siltation for this 50-foot section. Then we would walk our other 3 50-foot sections and estimate, write down a number for each one of those sections, and then average them together for our siltation coverage estimate. Our next parameter are there submerged aquatic plants? In Illinois, this is, usually you're going to mark no. We do not have very many aquatic plants that grow in our streams. An aquatic plant that's submerged, that means that it's rooted in the bottom of the stream and it grows up to the surface of the stream. It has to live in the stream. And so you don't want to mark down aquatic plants that are like grass or terrestrial plants that have been flooded or underwater. Those are not aquatic plants. You want to mark down aquatic plants that always have to live in the water and do not grow much above the surface. They're under the water, growing up from the bottom. Examples of this can be pondweed, water milfoil, lotus, plants like that. And so be careful what you mark for aquatic plants. You can circle yes or no. If you see them, you can mark down the types. If you do not know the type of aquatic plant, go ahead and take a picture of it if you have a camera, and you can send it to us at the RiverWatch office, and we'll try to help you identify it. So we want to mark if we have submerged aquatic plants or not. The next line we have to fill out is riparian vegetation. Riparian is a word for the land immediately next to the stream bank. And so we want to look at our stream bank and estimate the vegetation. Now you can go in as much detail as you want for this section. You can write down the species of plants that you see, or if you're a little bit less familiar with your plants, you can write down that there's a lot of grass coverage, shrub coverage, which is woody plants, low growing woody plants, and lots of large trees. You can write that down. Or you can get a little bit more specific and say, we have a beech tree, we have river birch. And again, you kind of want to take into account your whole site and write down a representative plants for your site. Our last section on this first habitat survey sheet is the bottom substrate. This is another percentage estimate. So you would walk your site and write down the percentage for an estimate for each 50-foot section. Then you would average it up at the end. And so if you look at your bottom substrate, we have several categories. They're kind of listed in order of their size. Starting with the largest, our largest size of stream substrate is bedrock. These are the rock. This is a solid rock bottom. Mostly rare in central Illinois, a little bit more common in southern and extreme northern Illinois. The next size is boulder. These are rocks greater than 10 inches. If you can get 10 inches, a 10-inch diameter out of it in any direction, we'll consider that a boulder. Cobble, that's our next size down. That's 2.5-inch to 10-inch rocks. So think baseball to kind of a little bigger than softball size rocks. Our next size down is gravel. These are rocks that are 1/10 of an inch to 2.5 inches. That's, as we looked at earlier, we have a lot of that. I was holding in my hand. Sand, that is substrate that is less than 1/10 of an inch, but you can still kind of feel the grain in your hand. The next one is silt. That's one of our finer substrates. That's kind of it's the darker stuff. It's usually gray or black, very smooth if you hold it in your hand. And then the finest substrate is hard pan clay, very smooth. It's also, if you see that on the stream bottom, sometimes it has a reddish or orangish or even a little bit of a yellowish tint to it. If you know what you're looking for, it's pretty obvious, but it's the finest dirt there is. Very, very smooth. And then you have an other category you can mark. If there's another kind of substrate, if you had a lot of, say you had a lot of logs or concrete blocks embedded in the bottom of your stream, you can mark that down as an other substrate. So we would estimate the percentage for each one, and you would do it for each 50-foot section. And then you would average them together at the end. We'll start here. If we look at this 50-foot section of stream, we look at the bottom, we do not see any bedrock. We don't see any of that, the large solid rock bottom. No bedrock here. We move down to the boulder. Those are rocks greater than 10 inches. I'm glancing from side to side here. In this 50-foot section, I also do not see any boulders. So no large substrates here. Then after that, we go to cobble. That's the baseball, softball size rocks. Very little cobble in this section, very little. We'll see if there's any more in the other stream sections, but for here we would also estimate 0. We would jot down a 0 on our page. Next substrate down is gravel. That's 1/10 of an inch to 2.5 inches. As I picked up earlier, we have a lot of gravel. So this is going to be a dominant substrate in our stream. For this site, I would probably estimate around 50% gravel coverage. So just drop down a number 50 by your gravel on your sheet. And then the next size down is sand. That's the coarse grainy stuff, around 1/10 of an inch or less in size. Over here we have a lot of sand. It's almost all sand. You can see all that coarse grainy stuff. So a lot of sand. I'd probably mark that as also as a 50. So we're about half gravel and half sand in this site. Then we move down to silt. Don't really have any silt substrate in this stream. Now some people get confused between the first parameter we did, substrate siltation coverage, and then the silt substrate that we're measuring now. The earlier parameter we measured is how much silt is resting on the stream bottom. It can be sitting on top of rocks, on logs, just how much silt is resting on top. The silt substrate, we're looking for silt that is just solid silt. If you stick your hand down in it, it's just more silt, and more silt. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for substrate. So not what's on top, but just solid silt. And here, we don't have silt on top for siltation coverage, and we do not have silt substrate either for deep silt. We don't have that. The next one is hard pan clay. I don't really see any hard pan clay here. Still looks like mostly gravel and sand, so we would estimate a 0 for hard pan clay. Then we're down to our other substrate. We do have a little bit of trash in the stream. Not too much. I don't really see any blocks or anything else too much embedded in the stream, so we won't mark anything else for other substrate on this section. And then you would also want to do that substrate estimation for all other 50-foot sections of your stream. Just jot down your estimate, and you can and then you add them up and average them when you get a chance. And that's what you would mark the box for, is your estimate for the whole 200-foot site. We just did a lot of estimates, a lot of proportions. So to save you time from running back and forth up and down your stream to get each estimate, go ahead and do every estimate for every section at the same time. So start at the bottom of your site, do your canopy cover, do your algal growth, do your siltation coverage in your first 50-foot section. Just jot those all down. Move to your next 50-foot section, jot all those estimates down. And so by the time you make it to the end of your stream, the end of your site I should say, you have all your estimates jotted down and you've only had to walk your stream site once.